Hi, everyone. Yeah, I want to talk about consciousness. I know it's a difficult subject and difficult to understand, and nobody understands it, so why the hell am I talking about it? But there is a level at which we can talk about it. Because if I had to ask you, are you conscious? You would say yes. How come you know that? So it's the whole question of consciousness is fascinating, and I want to try and break it down a little bit to see if we can't find some value in this conversation around consciousness. Because everybody will say they're conscious. Science struggles to understand consciousness. It's one of the most important ideas around scientific investigation today for those that are interested to go there, because it's such a difficult thing to do and to go and to understand, and yet there is a word for it. How come? How come there's a word for it? And how come there's a word for brain and mind and consciousness? All separate words. So clearly, somewhere along the way, people understood that there was a difference. We gave them different words. So deep within ourselves, we know there is a difference. The trouble is that science has not shown any real depth understanding of it and struggles to understand it. So everybody else says, oh, let's wait for science to understand it. You don't need to wait. Let me tell you that. It's the very fact that you have words and you sometimes use mind and sometimes you use brain and sometimes you use consciousness will tell you straight away that somewhere inside you, you understand what these words mean and what I'm going to be talking about. So let's start at the level of brain, because that's easy. We know the brain. You can open up the head and find the brain. But does the brain think? Is there any evidence that the brain can actually think? Yeah, there's evidence that when you think, there's some kind of electromagnetic shifting in the brain, but does the brain think? Does matter object actually think? Does this matter object brain, can the brain actually love? Can it have feelings and emotions? No evidence for that. The brain is just a structure. Well, what about the mind then? Well, the mind has a different feeling to it, doesn't it? The mind has a sense that it can do things, that it can think. So if we go to using the metaphor of a computer, for example, I mean, the computer that's sitting on my desk over here is hardware. And that hardware is really important if I want to do the kinds of things that I do on a computer. But that's the hardware. There's also software. And the software is something which flows and something which connects and moves around. And I can play around with the software by tapping the computer, the keys of the computer, which are the hardware. And all that kind of thing makes the computer more operational. And then, of course, there is the internet. And there is something much broader beyond the actual hardware and software. And there's a connection to something much bigger as well. So, yeah, not difficult to understand the difference between brain and between mind and between consciousness. When we talk about consciousness, we're talking about something much bigger, something much more extensive. When we're talking about mind, we're talking about something that's obviously much more localized. And when we're talking about brain, we're talking about something that is very localized. So how then do we understand what's going on? And how can we use this information in a practical way? Because if we can't use it in a practical way, then we can just throw it away. We don't need to really understand it. But hell, it makes a difference to me, anyway, that I understand the difference between my brain and my mind and consciousness itself. So let's unpack it a little bit more then and see what it's all about. So we need to, somehow mind and consciousness has something to do with reality. How come? Well, the fact is there is some idea that reality is outside and there's an inside reality. It was one of the first questions I asked my guru, I remember 40, 50 years ago, around reality, that I'd gone to a nightclub the night before, and with my eyes open, there was one reality. With my eyes closed, there was another reality. Which one, I said, is real? Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. Which one is real? Is there an outside reality? I think I've discussed this before, that the tree that you look at, what seems to be outside you, is actually inside. You look at the tree, and the photons of the tree pass through your eyes, move along the nerve processes to the visual cortex. And the tree is actually seen inside something of your brain-mind area. So that's where you actually see reality, not outside you. So there's nothing, while your experience is that there's an outer world, the fact is that that doesn't really show up. When you look at the reality of the science of it even, everything that you see outside you is appearing inside your head. Now that's quite an important statement to make, because if reality is inside you and not outside you, well, that does give you a bit of a handle on reality, doesn't it? I mean, it's all happening inside. So if it's happening inside you, and you can shift your thinking, you can influence your feeling and emotions even, then you have a handle there on reality. Did you know that? Reality isn't what you... reality is what you think it is. And that's an interesting statement to say reality is what you think it is, because you're the one that's making these decisions around what's appearing inside your mind. Now that's a big statement to make. If all that you know is happening inside you, not outside you, then you have a handle on the ability to shift the way you see the world. Because what's appearing on the screen inside, because everything is appearing on the screen, as it were, the tree outside is appearing on the screen inside. And then you look at the screen and you decide whether you like it or don't like it. Well, you can make the decision that you like it or don't like it. Or you can maybe shift and influence the way reality is appearing on the screen. So, the fact is that if you are uncomfortable with your life, then you need to have a look at what you're doing with what's appearing on the screen inside you. So maybe the mind does have a part to play here, and maybe through recognizing that your whole reality is appearing on the screen, which is within you, as it were, that you can influence the way you approach that reality. So that's why I've said before, you can choose to be an optimist or a pessimist around what's happening inside you, because reality is inside you, not outside you. So you can choose to be optimistic about it or pessimistic. Or you can try and shift the way things are appearing on the screen. But then there's consciousness. And in my understanding, consciousness is even deeper than the mind. If I had to ask you, are you conscious? You would say yes. If I had to ask my partner, is she conscious? You would say yes. So consciousness somehow is more universal. Mind is more personal. Consciousness is transcendental, because everybody talks about consciousness. They're conscious. And consciousness is where awareness is. So you're aware of the thinking that's happening. You're aware of what's appearing on the screen. So it's as if there are different layers of reality. The one reality is what's appearing on the screen, which is coming through your senses. The other one is the way the mind involved with thinking looks at this reality. And then there's consciousness itself, which is awareness on the deepest level, aware of what is happening. So consciousness is an interesting phenomena, because every single human being on this planet Earth would say that they're conscious. Are you conscious? I'm conscious. So yeah, we're all conscious. And that consciousness is kind of shared among everyone. And that's the reason why I've spoken about the power of prayer. We all somehow link together through the power of consciousness. Consciousness has a number of qualities. One is awareness. It's just aware, non-judgmental. Non-judgmental. It just sees things as they are. That's consciousness. But consciousness has another interesting quality, and that is, we can call it love. Love is just an interesting word, because it's the love of consciousness is clearly not emotional love. It's non-judgmental love. It's transcendental love, because it's everywhere. Like consciousness, it's everywhere. It means that the universe, underlying universe, is driven or holds unconditional love within its heart. That's consciousness. And another name for consciousness is also God. So we have consciousness, which is at the deepest level, which is awareness, which is unconditional love. So I guess, in my sense, I often ask myself, where do I want to stand in relationship to reality and to the world and to the people around me? If I'm just brain-centered and I think of myself as just a body, having to deal with a world that's flinging it around like the weather, that I'm just a brain, and the brain has chemistry, and that's it. That's who I am. That's a materialistic approach. That's about where science tends to take us all. That there's nothing more than matter, and matter is driven by certain laws out there, and that's it. But that's not where science has even gone today. Science understands that there's something bigger. And in my understanding, there is mind, and mind is still confined, still has boundaries to it, has conditional love, as a way of using thinking and feeling. And then we have consciousness. At the deepest level, we have consciousness, and that's who we are as human beings also. So, but it depends where you want to place yourself, as it were. In the brain, a matter object. In the mind, self-centered, egocentric even, very often, using thinking. Or consciousness, unconditional love, God. Where do you understand? Makes a difference to outcome. Have a good day.